Ever wonder what happens when American engineers throw conventional wisdom out the window and build tractors that defy logic? From luxury cabs with radios and heaters in the 1930s to giants weighing over 100,000 pounds, these machines push boundaries and sometimes common sense. Today, we're counting down 10 of the strangest American tractors that actually rolled off production lines and into fields across this great nation. 10. Big Bud 16V series. Before we get to the absolute giant of the Big Bud family, let's talk about the standard Big Bud tractors that came out of Havre, Montana. These weren't your average farm tractors, they were custom-built powerhouses designed for the massive wheat operations of the American West. The Big Bud Company started producing these workhorses in the mid-1970s, and by the time they stopped in 1991, they built around 500 units. What made these tractors unusual wasn't just their size, but their philosophy. Ron Harmon and his team at Northern Manufacturing Company didn't believe in computerized systems or proprietary parts. Instead, they built tractors using mining industry components, the same heavy-duty transmissions and axles that kept massive mining trucks running for decades. The frames were 1.5 inches of solid steel, thicker than anything else on the agricultural market. These machines were completely modular. Don't like your engine? Slide the whole power unit out on a skid system in about 4 hours and drop in something different. Need to work on the transmission? The cab folded back for the easy access, a 4-hour job compared to the 40 hours it took on some contemporary tractors. Farmers could fix these machines themselves with parts from industrial suppliers, not dealerships. In an era when tractors were becoming increasingly complex and dealer-dependent, Big Bud went the opposite direction. They built tractors like they did in the old days, tough, simple, and fixable by anyone with a wrench and some determination. It was a middle finger to the entire industry, and farmers loved it. Before we move on to the next one in the list, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you're enjoying this content so far, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch these videos without subscribing. Imagine what we could accomplish if everyone subscribed. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. Thanks to all of you who do. 9. Minneapolis Moline Uni Tractor. Minneapolis Moline had some wild ideas over the years, but the Uni Tractor might take the cake for sheer audacity. Introduced in the early 1950s, this three-wheeled contraption wasn't really a tractor at all. It was a powered unit designed to hook up to different implements that would complete the machine. The concept was ambitious and slightly insane. Instead of having different tractors for different jobs, you'd have one power unit that could mate with a combine head, a corn picker, a forage harvester, or whatever else you needed. The Uni Tractor would drive up to the implement, connect, and suddenly you had a complete machine. Minneapolis Moline marketed it as the all-in-one solution for modern farming. The engineering was actually brilliant. The three-wheel design gave it incredible maneuverability. And the modular concept meant farmers could theoretically save money by not duplicating engines across multiple machines. The power unit contained all the expensive components: engine, transmission, hydraulics, while the implements were relatively simple attachments. But farmers weren't buying it, literally. Many called it the Minneapolis Moline motorcycle because of its unusual appearance. The concept was too forward-thinking for its time. Farmers were used to dedicated machines for specific tasks, and the idea of constantly swapping implements didn't appeal to them. Storage was an issue too. You still needed space for all those implement attachments. The Uni Tractor was sold in small numbers before quietly disappearing. It was a glimpse into a modular future that agriculture wasn't prepared to embrace, proving that sometimes being early is the same as being wrong. 8. International Harvester Auto Wagon. When International Harvester decided to motorize American farms, they didn't start with tractors, they started with something even stranger. The Auto Wagon was essentially a high-wheeled truck designed for farmers who weren't quite ready to give up their horses but wanted to experiment with this newfangled internal combustion technology. Built from 1908 to 1917, the Auto Wagon featured a horizontally opposed, air-cooled twin-cylinder engine pumping out about 15 horsepower. With its massive ground clearance and wagon-style body, it could navigate the rutted, muddy roads that were standard in rural America. The rear seat could convert into a flatbed, making it equally useful for hauling the family to church or bringing crops to market. What made this contraption particularly odd was its position in automotive history. It wasn't quite a car, wasn't quite a truck, and definitely wasn't a tractor. The massive wheels, 45 inches in diameter at the rear, gave it an almost comical appearance, like someone had motorized a prairie schooner. The tank held 7 gallons of fuel, enough for 75 to 100 miles of travel, which was considerable range for the era. International Harvester was essentially inventing the pickup truck before anyone knew they needed one. Farmers could use it for everything from mail runs to hauling supplies, and it didn't require the care and feeding of horses. By 1910, IH renamed it the motor truck, acknowledging what it really was, the ancestor of every farm truck that would follow. When production ended in 1917, the auto wagon had proven that farmers were ready for motorized transport, paving the way for the explosion of both trucks and tractors in the 1920s. 7. Caterpillar 60. When C.L. Best introduced the Model 60 crawler in 1919, he created what many consider the all-time classic track-laying tractor. This wasn't just another machine, it was a 21,000-pound colossus that redefined what earth-moving equipment could accomplish. After the Best and Holt merger created Caterpillar in 1925, the renamed Caterpillar 60 became the stuff of legend. The 60 was enormous even by today's standards. Its tracks were 20 inches wide with a ground contact surface stretching 7 feet 5 inches, spreading that tremendous weight to just 5.4 pounds per square inch of ground pressure. The 4-cylinder engine displaced over 1,100 cubic inches and required a 3-foot steel bar inserted into the flywheel for hand cranking. Stories of starting procedures became legendary if the engine backfired. That starting bar could launch into suborbital flight, as operators joked. What really set the 60 apart was its global impact. This tractor worked on every continent except Antarctica. It cleared mahogany forests in Africa, developed rubber plantations in South America, built roads in China, and constructed canals in Europe. When the Hoover Dam was being built, Caterpillar 60s hauled the massive pipe sections into place. At the 1915 Panama Pacific International Exposition, it demonstrated power that seemed impossible for a mobile machine. The engineering was groundbreaking for its time. The transmission evolved from 2-speed to 3-speed configurations, and the drawbar pull increased to over 12,000 pounds. Nearly 19,000 units rolled off the production lines in California and Illinois over its 12-year run. The 60 established Caterpillar's reputation for building indestructible equipment and set design standards that influenced crawler tractors for generations. 6. Moline Universal Model D. The Moline Universal Model D was so far beyond its contemporaries that it's hard to believe it was built in 1917. When Moline Plow Company bought Universal Tractor Manufacturing in 1915, they inherited an unconventional design that looked more like a motorized chariot than a tractor. By 1917, they'd refined it into the Model D, a 2-wheeled power unit that attached to various implements to create a complete 4-wheeled articulated machine. Here's what made it absolutely mind-blowing for 1917 electric start, electric lights, and an electronic governor system controlled by a rheostat. Let that sink in. While most tractors still required hand cranking and operated only during daylight, the Model D had technology that wouldn't become standard for another 20 to 30 years. The operator controlled engine speed by turning a knob that sent electrical signals to the governor, essentially an early drive-by-wire system. The 4-cylinder engine produced 18 horsepower and featured overhead valves, pressurized lubrication, and a massive 2.5-inch diameter crankshaft. The entire drivetrain was enclosed and ran in oil baths. It even had a differential lock for when one wheel lost traction. The engineering was spectacular, with features like a 90-degree belt pulley drive at the front that allowed operators to back up the tractor to tension belts. But this innovation came at a price literally. At $1,325 in 1920, it was costly, and the 2-wheeled design made it prone to tipping. The high-mounted engine didn't help stability. While exact production numbers are uncertain, the Model D was built through 1923 before financial troubles and the agricultural depression of the early 1920s killed production. The Model D proved you could be too innovative for your own good. 5. Bates Steel Mule. If you wanted to see something truly bizarre rolling through American fields in the 1910s and 1920s, the Bates steel mule was your machine. This wasn't just unconventional, it was downright alien-looking. Picture this: a round radiator tube at the front blending into a half-round hood, two widely set front wheels, and a single crawler track centered at the rear. The whole thing looked like someone had crossed a steam engine with a tank and a motorcycle. Designed by Albert Bates and built by the Joliet Oil Tractor Company starting in 1915, the steel mule featured one of the strangest control systems ever devised. A telescoping horizontal pipe extended from the rear with three different wheels and a lever. The smallest wheel operated the clutch, the middle wheel steered, the largest shifted gears, and the lever controlled the throttle. Operators stood behind this contraption like they were piloting a land-going ship. The single rear track was ingenious in its own right. It was mounted on a hinged frame with heavy coil springs that kept it in contact with uneven ground. The compound lever hitch attached the drawbar to the front of the oscillating track frame, so pulling a load actually increased downward pressure on the track, improving traction. It was brilliant engineering wrapped in the strangest possible package. The four-cylinder engine hid inside the tubular frame, burning about a gallon of kerosene per acre plowed. While the single-track design was eventually abandoned for a more conventional dual-track Model D in 1918, the original steel mule remains one of the most uniquely American attempts to mechanize agriculture. The steel mule sold for $985 initially, making it accessible to smaller farms despite its odd appearance. 4. Caterpillar Diesel 60. In 1931, Caterpillar did something that would change farming forever. They put a diesel engine in a tractor. The Diesel 60 wasn't just the world's first diesel-powered crawler tractor, it was a glimpse into the future of agricultural power. Only 157 of these historic machines were built, making them incredibly rare today. The challenge of adapting diesel technology to tractors was enormous. Diesel engines were bulky, expensive boat anchors used in stationary and marine applications. Art Rosen, a brilliant engineer hired directly by Caterpillar chairman C.L. Best, spent 4 years solving seemingly impossible problems. The prototype, nicknamed Old Betsy, went through 16 months of testing before Caterpillar felt confident enough to begin production. When the first Diesel 60 rolled off the line in September 1931 with serial number 1C1, it weighed almost 2 tons more than its gasoline predecessor. The frame rails had to be extended and reinforced. Castings replaced fabricated parts, and the transmission was beefed up to handle the diesel's massive torque. But the payoff was immediate, incredible lugging ability, reliability, and fuel economy that made gasoline tractors look like gas guzzlers. The Diesel 60 became the first Caterpillar painted in highway yellow, the color that would become synonymous with cat equipment. 10 of the first 25 units went to work on Belgium's King Albert Canal, operating daily for 9 years straight. One unit, Old Tusco, set world records for non-stop plowing and fuel economy. By 1933, Caterpillar's diesel production exceeded the entire previous year's U.S. diesel output. The Diesel 60 didn't just introduce diesel power to farming, it started a transformation that would make Caterpillar the world's largest diesel engine manufacturer within 6 years. 3. International Harvester, Auto Buggy. Before International Harvester became a trucking powerhouse, they built something that defied categorization, the Auto Buggy. Launched in 1907 as IH's first production vehicle, this high-wheeler was marketed as a farmer's auto for rural customers who needed transportation tougher than any city car could provide. The Auto Buggy was essentially a motorized wagon with massive wooden wheels 41 inches in front, 45 inches in the rear, wrapped in solid rubber tires. The air-cooled, flat twin engine sat horizontally in the frame, producing around 15-20 horsepower with a displacement of 196 cubic inches. With buggy-style bench seating and initially tiller steering, wheels came later, it looked like someone had ripped the horses off a carriage and bolted on an engine. The engineering was sophisticated for 1907. The mid-mounted engine provided good weight distribution, while the enormous wheels and high ground clearance meant it could navigate roads that would swallow contemporary automobiles. Full elliptical leaf springs on all 4 corners provided a surprisingly smooth ride. The friction drive transmission was simple and reliable, perfect for farmers who needed to maintain their own equipment. But what made the auto buggy truly strange was its target market. International Harvester wasn't selling to city folks wanting automobiles, they were selling to farmers who understood horses but were curious about motors. At a time when the automobile industry was focusing on speed and style, IH built something practical, reliable, and totally utilitarian. Production ended in 1912 as IH shifted to trucks, but those 5 years proved farmers were ready for motorized transport. The auto buggy sold for around $750, making it accessible to progressive farmers ready to embrace mechanization. 2. Big Bud, 747. In 1977, Ron Harmon and the crew at Northern Manufacturing Company in Havre, Montana, built something that shouldn't exist, a tractor so colossal it defies belief: the Big Bud. 747 wasn't just large, it was named after Boeing's jumbo jet and lived up to the comparison. This one-of-a-kind Titan stands 14 feet tall, stretches 27 feet long, and spans 25 feet wide with duals. When fully ballasted with a full 1,000-gallon fuel tank, it tips the scales at over 135,000 pounds. Built for the Rossi Brothers cotton operation in California at a cost of $300,000, the 747 was powered by a 16-cylinder Detroit diesel 16V92T engine. Originally producing 760 horsepower, subsequent owners have pushed it to 1,100 horsepower. Those aren't truck components. Under their mining equipment. The original 8-foot diameter tires were custom made by United Tire Company of Canada, and when that company went bankrupt in 2000, the tractor faced retirement until Goodyear stepped up with special agricultural tires in 2020. The 747's working capabilities are staggering. Pulling an 80-foot cultivator, it can work 1.3 acres per minute at 8 miles per hour. In the right conditions, it burns just 3/4 of a gallon of diesel per acre, remarkable efficiency for something weighing more than a loaded semi-truck. The cab features air conditioning, heating, AM/FM radio, and even an 8-track stereo system, because when you're piloting a land yacht, you might as well travel in comfort. Today, the Big Bud 747 holds the Guinness World Record as the world's largest farm tractor. After working cotton fields in California for 11 years, and then in Florida, it returned to Montana in 1997. The Williams brothers of Big Sandy used it on their farm until 2009, and it's been displayed at various museums since, though it still returns to Montana fields for harvest work. It represents peak American agricultural ambition, the belief that if big is good, biggest is best. 1. Minneapolis Moline UDLX Comfort Tractor. Taking the #1 spot for the strangest American tractor ever built is the Minneapolis Moline UDLX Comfort Tractor, a machine so far beyond its market's expectations that only 125 were ever made. In 1938, while farmers were still getting used to rubber tires and electric starters, Minneapolis Moline built what was essentially a luxury car that could plow fields. The UDLX featured the first fully enclosed, factory-installed cab on any farm tractor. But this wasn't just weather protection, it was a rolling luxury suite. The cab included a passenger seat, heater, radio, windshield wipers, a cigarette lighter, and even an ashtray. The interior was upholstered with diamond-tufted seating. Safety glass, a rearview mirror, speedometer, and full instrumentation made it more car-like than tractor-like. The whole thing was painted in brilliant prairie gold with chrome bumpers and hubcaps. Minneapolis Moline marketed it as a dual-purpose vehicle, work your fields by day, drive to town for dinner, and a movie at night. With a 5-speed transmission and a top speed of 40 miles per hour, it could theoretically replace both your tractor and your car. The high-compression 283 cubic inch engine produced 37.8 horsepower at the drawbar, making it genuinely capable in the field. The fatal flaw? At $2,155 in 1938, it cost nearly twice as much as a regular tractor. Farmers could buy both a standard Minneapolis Moline U tractor for around $1,000 and a new Ford sedan for $725 and still have money left over. The cab entry through a rear door meant climbing over the power takeoff shaft, not exactly elegant. At 6,400 pounds with no suspension, that 40 miles per hour top speed was more theoretical than comfortable. When 12,000 farmers saw it unveiled in 1938, their reaction was shock and disdain, not enthusiasm. The Depression-era timing couldn't have been worse. The comfort tractor was a magnificent failure. Too expensive, too ambitious, and too early. Today, restored examples command up to $200,000 at auction, proving that sometimes failure becomes legendary. Only about 40 are known to survive. From the luxury-equipped comfort tractor to the gargantuan Big Bud 747, these tractors prove that American innovation sometimes means building something nobody asked for, but everybody remembers. These machines pushed boundaries, challenged conventions, and occasionally face-planted in spectacular fashion. But that's what makes them fascinating pieces of agricultural history. If you enjoyed this journey through America's strangest tractors, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Drop a comment about which tractor surprised you most, or if you've got a story about seeing one of these iron horses in action. Until next time, keep those wheels turning and that history alive.